One man deliberately trapped his own army between 80,000 enemies on the inside and 250,000 enemies on the outside. It is the most insane engineering decision in the history of warfare. A double-walled trap, and Julius Caesar sealed himself inside it on purpose. Here is the brutal setup nobody tells you about. 52 BC, a hill called Alesia, rising out of the Burgundy countryside in what's now France. From a distance, it looks almost peaceful. Terraced slopes, a river curling around the base, smoke drifting up from a fortress packed with 80,000 men who all know they're being hunted. Inside those walls is the one man who'd done something no Gallic leader had managed in 6 years of war. He'd actually united the tribes against Rome. His name was Vercingetorix, and he wasn't cowering behind those walls. He was waiting, because waiting was the only weapon he had left.
Caesar had spent 6 years grinding through Gaul one tribe at a time, the way a millstone grinds wheat, slow, relentless, almost boring in its inevitability. Then Vercingetorix broke the pattern. He stopped meeting Roman legions in open battle, where Roman discipline always won. Instead, he burned his own people's grain fields ahead of the Roman advance, starved Caesar's army by denying it food before a single sword was drawn, and kept his forces moving like smoke, never where Rome expected. For the first time in years, Rome was losing ground without losing a battle.
Then Vercingetorix made the one costly call that would define the rest of his life. He pulled 80,000 men inside the hilltop fortress at Alesia, betting he could hold the walls long enough for the rest of Gaul to rally and crush Caesar from behind. Caesar's answer was cold, simple, and merciless. Don't storm the walls. Don't lose men charging timber and stone. Just starve them. He ordered his legions to build an 11-mile ring of ditch, rampart, and sharpened timber, completely encircling the town. Watchtowers rising every few hundred feet like ribs on a cage. No food getting in, no army getting out. A death sentence requiring no battle at all, just time. But Vercingetorix still had one card, and he played it before the noose fully closed. He smuggled riders through a gap in the unfinished wall with a single message racing across Gaul. Every tribe still standing marched to Alesia now. And they came. Caesar's own war record puts the relief force at 250,000 men. Modern historians look at that number the way you'd look at a fisherman's story, almost certainly inflated, since feeding 250,000 men on Gallic roads and granaries would have been a logistical impossibility, and Caesar had every reason as a writer to make the army he beat sound biblical. But even halved, even quartered, it was an enormous force, and it was marching straight for the back of Caesar's own lines. This is the exact moment every commander in military history would order a retreat. Caesar instead gave a command that's still dissected in war colleges today. Build a second wall, 13 miles of it, facing the opposite direction, outward, away from the very town he was strangling. Sit with that for a second. He had just built a fortress around his own fortress. 60,000 Roman legionaries packed into the narrow gap between two rings of timber, with one enemy army sealed inside the inner wall and another enemy army about to crash into the outer one. People call it the wooden donut. That's not a clever nickname. That's exactly the shape of the trap, and Caesar had sealed himself inside it on purpose.
So why wasn't this suicide? Because Caesar wasn't betting on luck. He was betting on the one thing Rome had that no tribal coalition could replicate: discipline that builds. Roman legionaries weren't just trained to fight, they were trained to dig, to fortify a camp from nothing every single night of a campaign. In the killing ground between the two walls, Caesar's engineers buried traps meant to gut an attack before it ever reached the timber. pits called Lilia, hidden beneath brush, each one cradling a sharpened stake aimed straight up, waiting for a foot to land wrong. Iron hooks called Stimuli, driven into the earth just below the surface, built to impale a man moving at a run. Tangles of sharpened branches called Sipi, laid out like a forest that bites back. None of it glamorous. Just thousands of men, exhausted, digging under deadline, because the only thing standing between them and annihilation from two directions was how fast they could finish.
Then it came. Both walls hit at once. The relief army slammed into the outer ring. Vercingetorix's men struck the inner ring at the same hour, the same breath. 60,000 Romans fighting outward and inward simultaneously along a perimeter stretching over 20 miles of dirt and timber. At one weak seam in the terrain, the line nearly tore open. If it had, the two Gallic forces would have linked hands inside the gap, and the Roman army between them would have ceased to exist by nightfall. Caesar's own account, echoed later by Plutarch, describes him riding personally toward the breach with his held-back cavalry reserve, his scarlet commander's cloak cutting through the smoke and chaos as a rallying point his own men could see from across the field. Some of that image was almost certainly sharpened over the centuries by writers eager to paint Caesar as something closer to myth than man, but the bones of it hold. A cavalry reserve, saved for exactly this moment, slammed into the relief army from behind while it was still locked against the wall. The Gauls broke. They scattered like water finding cracks in stone, and without them, Vercingetorix's breakout had nowhere left to go. Within days, he rode out alone and laid his weapons down at Caesar's feet. Whether that exact image is fact or legend polished smooth by later writers, the outcome underneath it is undeniable. Organized Gallic resistance ended that week. Within a generation, Gaul was a Roman province, its roads, its language, its law, rebuilt under Rome for the next 400 years. The root system of what would one day become France was laid down in the dirt around that hill. People remember Alesia as a story about courage against impossible odds. The real lesson is colder and far more interesting. Caesar didn't beat 250,000 men because his soldiers were braver. He beat them because his men could dig faster than the other side could organize an attack. In the ancient world, that single fact, who builds quicker than the enemy can swing, was often the entire war, decided long before a single blade ever crossed another.